Welcome to a new podcast episode from the Fireside Chat series, a highlight of the Deal Forum at the 2024 Leadership and Dealmaking Summit, which was held on September 24th at the prestigious New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. We are making our Fireside Chats available to those who couldn't be with us in person and for those who would like to experience and listen to it again. Hello there, M&A Advisor community. This is Roger Aguinaldo, and welcome back to the M&A Advisor podcast. Since 1998, the M&A Advisor's mission is to recognize achievements, provide thought leadership, and connect professionals in mergers and acquisitions for the purpose of improving your deal-making craft and accelerating your deal flow. We are so glad you're joining us for this insightful and inspiring podcast conversation curated for mergers and acquisitions professionals. Whether you're an aspiring deal maker, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the world of mergers and acquisitions, you'll find something valuable and relevant in our podcast. Our goal is to bring you the best insights, stories, and tips from the experts who've been there and done that, so you can learn from their successes and mistakes and take your deal making skills to the next level. But before we dive in today's episode, we have a small favor to ask you. If you enjoy listening to our podcast and find it useful, please consider following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and subscribing to our M&A Alerts newsletter. You can find the links in the description below. This will help us reach more people like you and grow our community of M&A professionals. It will also let us know that you appreciate our work and want us to keep producing more quality content for you. Plus, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always be in the loop with the latest trends in the M&A world to improve and accelerate your deal making. So please follow us. You are the reason we do what we do, and we couldn't do it without you. And now for today's podcast. Continuing with our Fireside Chat series during the Deal Forum at the 2024 Leadership and Dealmaking Summit, I sat down with Jon Henes, the CEO and founder of C Street Advisory, a leading firm in restructuring, corporate governance, and crisis management communications. Jon is a trusted advisor known for his expertise in navigating complex corporate challenges. In addition to his business success, Jon has made significant contributions in politics, serving as the National Finance Chair for Vice President Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign and as Finance Chair for Ray McGuire's 2021 mayoral campaign in New York City. Join me as I sit down with Jon in this fireside chat, exploring his insights on corporate resilience and the intersection of business and politics. Let's dive in. Okay, great. Pleasure to have you here, Jon. Jon Henes, CEO and founder of C Street, senior partner Kirkland & Ellis in their restructuring group, national finance chair for Vice President Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign, and the finance chair for Ray McGuire's 2021 New York City mayoral campaign. So you're actively, obviously, involved in politics. The theme here is just try to get a number of our emerging leaders, those here and the live stream and listening on the podcast, to talk about how M&A professionals, investment bankers, private equity, there's a lot of fear of you don't want to be this caricature, either running for office or being involved in politics. Sort of how do you kind of get involved? Is it just writing a check, Jon, or what do you do?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways to get involved. My way was unique. I was never really involved in politics at all, other than very interested in it and did a lot of talking about it, but not involved. And I have 5 children. And in 2019, my oldest, who is turning 17, walked into my room, handed me something he wrote and said, "Dad, I wrote this article. Can I publish it?" And it was an article on why his first vote ever would be for Kamala Harris as president. And I knew who she was. I knew she was the AG of California, now senator. Didn't know much about her. Read the article. Told my son he probably can't publish it, but could put it on medium.com and social media if he wanted to, which he did. And the next day I got an email from a mutual friend of mine and Doug Emhoff's, although I didn't know Doug at the time, saying, are you involved in the campaign? If not, would you like to be? And if you'd like to be, I'll introduce you to Doug Emhoff. I Googled Doug, saw who he was, said, sure. He introduced me. They asked if I would do an event, fundraising event at Kirkland when I was still at Kirkland. I said, sure, really, because I wanted to get my son involved since he was so passionate about it. And that turned into me becoming Kamala's national finance chair. Now, how do other people get involved? Writing a check always helps. People do ask, people come up to me all the time to say, I've got this policy idea. I want to talk to this congressman or this senator. How do I do it? And I say, write a check. I think that's always the best way. But if you want to be involved, it's as easy as just saying, I want to do it. I want to help raise money. I want to help on a policy issue. And then it's saying yes. And it ends up being a lot of work because if they actually respect you and think you are providing either good advice or a good network, they will reach out to you all the time. And my one warning is that if you do get involved, everyone's going to call you. You get calls from every single person, and you need to be able to say no.
Yeah, it sounds like your son was pretty prescient picking someone who is going to be on the top ticket of the presidential campaign in 2024. You've met her? Did you know that, eventually she would have become vice president and president?
Well, you never know those things, but and when I got to know her during the 2020 campaign, after going to the events and listening to her and talking to her, I really believed in her and believe in her. And so I've stayed involved with her throughout and kind of watched, obviously, Joe Biden pick her as the VP, watched Joe Biden drop out and her become the nominee. And now, I'm very involved in a number of ways through this campaign right now. But it's for me, because of my son and now my family so involved, it's a great, amazing experience. But I will say, what happens in the political world, in the governmental world matters. It matters for business, right? We're seeing it right now and everybody has their own opinions of it, me too, and I'll keep them to myself. But you look at regulation, right? And there's a lot of people out there who say we need a better regulatory environment, one that's more transparent, that's more, comprehensive, where people really know what's going to happen next rather than being surprised. And that's an important thing. So it really does matter, and getting involved and having some influence and weighing in can make a difference. And every once in a while you see things that you say that then become, policy, which is good if you're given the right advice.
Well, that's good. So we had Wilbur Ross, who is Trump's former Commerce Secretary, early this morning. He told us, shared with us his sort of favorite story about Donald Trump. Can you share a story about Kamala Harris?
Well, it was Wilbur's, the one where he got into the limo and he had the American flag. Trump had the American flag.
Oh, yeah, you heard that one. So he had that one. He also told the one when Trump was about to declare bankruptcy of the Taj Mahal,
yes.
and that
and the mother and his mom.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, you probably heard those. Okay. Well, it was a good story. They're good stories. So you have something like that you'll share in your upcoming memoir if you do one.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone will read that memoir. I have so many different stories, but I'll say this. So with not about the vice president, but I'll talk about the second gentleman for a second, because he and I became, he's now one of my best friends, but it was because during the campaign, these campaigns are so arduous. So when they're on the campaign trail, it's nonstop, right? They're running from event to event, very little sleep, people asking a million questions, talking, there's the stress. And whenever he would come to New York during the 2020 campaign, he would text me and he would say, I'm coming into town tonight. Can we just go sit someplace, have a scotch, and talk about anything but the campaign? And we would just sit there and talk about life. And what you realize is, it's very easy watching people on TV and reading the paper and social media and not seeing the human side of these politicians. but they're there. And so what drew me to the vice president was a few things. It was her humanity. It was how much she cared about everyday people, that her whole life was spent focusing on the people. It was this pragmatism that she had, right? She's not an ideologue. She's not like, we have to do this because of X. She's looking at the real world, pulling people together to figure out what the right policies are. And that was something that really, because that's how I live my life. Like when all of us who live in the corporate world, when we get into a big negotiation, a good situation, we need to be talking to our colleagues, talking to the other side, figuring out compromise, getting to the right place. It's really no different when you're in the political world, but so many politicians don't do that. So many politicians just have their way and they try to run that way. I like that she understands the importance of the private sector as well as the public sector, and that really drew me to her.
I think when you get on that level, and I've heard this. I
actually do have a favorite story.
Yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Not to interrupt.
All right, no, go ahead.
So my bet, because it goes to my son again, in 2020, they had a huge event at Brooklyn Bowl in Williamsburg for Kamala. And so we were one of the co-chairs of the event. And at the end, my son and I were leaving, and she was staying with three people talking. And so I leaned in and just said, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but we'll see you later. He said, oh, great. And she's like, wait, hold on. And said to the three people, I have to make an introduction. And she looked at my son and she said, meet Sam Henes as dad. And my son loved that. And I was like, that's like a real good thing. So,
oh, that's great. And he's, I would presume he's very excited about now she's at the top of the ticket. And well, she was on the top of the ticket then, and now is officially at the top of the ticket. You also worked on Ray McGuire's 2021 New York City campaign. What was that like?
So I met Ray through.
And who was that? For those a few people don't know who Ray is, and if they're outside of New York City. So
Ray was the vice chair of city, and then he stepped down to run for mayor. And I met Ray through Kamala's campaign because as I said before, one of the things she would do was bring people together. So Ray and I would sit in these 10-person meetings with her to talk about economic policy and other policies. And Ray and I became really close. And I, along with probably 1,000 other people, sat down with Ray at different times to say, you should run for mayor. And so when he ran, he said, would you help out? And there was like, I think 5 or 6 of us as kind of finance chairs, but it helped him run. And I saw then a different, like local politics is very different than national politics in some ways. But it was a great experience to run with him. And it's actually, other things that come out of this, being involved in the political world is you get to meet a whole new network of people that you've never met before, and incredible people. And for me, it actually was one of the impetuses to leave Kirkland and start C Street, right? Because at Kirkland, as a lawyer, and I did restructurings, I generally represented and advised companies that were in some sort of financial distress or crisis. And one of the issues that I saw, and it really got highlighted to me during the political processes I was involved in, was the importance of communication. I saw how even with the VP, when I first saw her step on stage and give her speeches, I was so drawn in. As she got more visibility and got out there more and had more people in her ear, her message got a little bit, it wasn't as sharp anymore. And what I saw with companies that were in trouble is that they also usually waited too long to start the process of figuring out how they were going to communicate to their stakeholders, communicate with the media, and they didn't look ahead to say, where are we going? So we have this issue today, but we're going to get this issue resolved at some point. So how are we going to position ourselves for success in the future? And that's why I ended up leaving Kirkland after 20 years and starting C Street, where we provide strategic communications advice to companies that are in crisis or.
So you're a lawyer at Kirkland. Calling all M&A restructuring and corporate finance professionals. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor, and I have some great news for you. You are warmly invited to the exclusive Deal Forum at the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit on November 20th, 2024 at the prestigious New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. Light up your M&A career and ignite your deal-making skills. Join us at the all-new Deal Forum of the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit. This assembly gathers business insiders and deal makers to discuss the top trends, opportunities, and key issues facing the mergers and acquisitions market. The faculty, comprised of industry experts, participate in fireside chat sessions where they engage in insightful discussions moderated by prominent media personalities and thought leaders, keynote conversations, and M&A TV interviews. Finally, network, exchange ideas, and gain valuable insights in a face-to-face conversation with a thought leader of your choice in one-on-one meetings. To know more about the Deal Forum at the Future of Dealmaking Summit or to register, visit our website at www.maadvisor.com. That's maadvisor.com. Email us at events@maadvisor.com or call +1 212 951 1550. That's 212 951 1550. Don't miss out. Register now. The future of deal making awaits. Now
Yes.
But you're no marketing or communications background, then you start a communications firm. What was that transition? Why that decision?
Well, one thing, and I'll bring it back to politics for a second. When you think about what Kamala has put out for her opportunity economy and focusing on founders and startups, for me, so I'm a Kirkland & Ellis partner, doing well, and make the decision to leave and have every advantage in the world to leave. I have a whole network that's going to be referring clients to me. I've got the know-how of how to run a professional services firm. I know a lot of people, so going out to hire and to help and recruit to bring it in. And Julie's here, and she actually does all that for us in an amazing way. And so I had all that advantage, and it's so hard to start a business. So when you think about just a person waking up saying, I want to start a business because I need to make money for my family, it's really hard to figure out how to do it. How do you go get the money? How do you go hire people? How do you market? How do you put together, an employment package for people? And so one of the things that I saw, and again, I'm going back to politics away from business, is how important it is to have the government helping at least getting people started. And then how important it is for the private sector to come together to help those people grow.
So is that your term, opportunity economy? Did she take that from you?
Not mine.
Oh, because I know.
I would love to take credit for it, but no.
I just want to know if you're feeding them any PR.
I feed a lot. I have no idea what gets listened to.
Anything come through, you could just tell us what take credit for.
It's an interesting thing. There's a lot of people that weigh in, right? A lot of people who know her people and weigh in. And everybody wants to think that they have a ton of influence and you never know what you've influenced or what you have, at least on the national level, unless you're really on the inside. But it's important, and I think for anybody here who wants to delve into politics a little bit, and I said this before, you can have an influence on things. You get to know the people that are on the inside. You get to talk to them. You get to hear things. You get to give your opinion, because it's very different saying, this is what I want my policy to be, and here's how you actually implement the policy. Because to implement the policy, you need the private sector to work with you. And so getting the private sector involved while you're creating the policy is really important, because then it can all move. And it's very similar to what we tell clients in terms of preparing for a crisis, right? Which is, you need to be prepared. You need to have continuity. You need to have consistency. You need to have transparency. You need to have all the pieces in place to make sure that when you're telling your story, it flows. Because the worst thing is to show, is to have something that's not consistent, where then you lose credibility. You need to keep your credibility and keep your strength. And whether that's for companies we're advising or people in the political arena, it's the same thing.
So how big is your team now?
We're 33 people now. Yeah.
And you focus on who are your clients?
So we've worked with everybody from WeWork and Bed Bath & Beyond and David's Bridal to middle market portfolio companies of private equity funds.
They need a lot of communications. WeWork and Bed Bath & Beyond, right?
Well, Bed Bath & Beyond, unfortunately, no longer.
Beyond,
but yeah,
right.
WeWork, they, when you think about these companies, right? So WeWork flies high and then comes back to earth a little bit, but it's a real company and, doing important things. We see it. When I first started this, before WeWork was our client, I have a friend who's kind of, I call him mini WeWork. And that's where we started our business. And I couldn't afford at the time to go, get a big office space. So to have this flexible office space that we could grow was important. So WeWork, really important company for businesses out there. And what they needed help on from us was, as they were going through this process, was how do they talk about it? How do they let their members, right, their renters know that things are going to be okay? Or as they were consolidating, how do we talk to our members and let them know how they're going to move to, a different space, and what's that going to mean? And what's the media saying? Because the media, because of Adam Newman, loved, is like high profile, but not necessarily everything that they were saying was true. Like a lot of what the media was talking about was the past as opposed to the present and the future. So we had to work with them to start getting that out there. But so there's a lot that goes into that. But those,
I guess you negotiated, you get some office space and you give them services. I mean, you're startups. You got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, we did all right with space and stuff. But yeah, it's all of these companies. There's definitely a similarity in everything that you do with these companies, but then every company is different, and every company has a different need and a different story. And so you need to really dig in. Like, we like to think of ourselves almost as management consultants. We dig in and learn everything about the company, and then working with the lawyers and the bankers and the financial advisors and the management team, coming together with this powerful strategic communication plan that we execute at the same time that deals are being struck and companies are continuing to operate.
I have two last questions, and if anybody else has any questions from the audience, one is, we had Wilbur Ross, and part of the theme was, well, how do you become Commerce Secretary of the U.S.? How does everybody here is capable of business background and all that, but how do you become one? So we kind of followed his career, and I still don't know how you become one, but it's very difficult. But you're involved in, on some level, I know, with her campaign. Are you looking at, going to the government, working on that level? Would you not be interested?
No, so I will definitely, if she wins, I'll definitely be involved in some way, but my focus is on C Street and continue with that.
That's the right answer, right?
It's a true answer. I mean, the best experience I've had in my entire life, and most fulfilling, was starting C Street and growing it. And we have got a big future ahead of us. But I will say, in terms of how you become Commerce Secretary, it depends, right? Like for Wilbur Ross, and I don't want to say it was easy because he had a long, illustrious career, but Donald Trump just makes choices based on, whatever he makes his choices based on. Most presidents, there's a whole process that goes into place, this transition process, which is long and in-depth and, with a huge amount of analysis and review and interviews and vetting and all those things, and figuring out who it's going to be.
So if you're going through the vetting process, if she asked you to do something, would you say yes?
Well, I would say yes if it's informal and helpful, but I would not say yes to going into the administration. At this point in my life, it's about the business.
It's all C Street. So just, for those who are perhaps on the fence of, being involved politically, any advice you would give people?
No, look, the one thing that we didn't touch on is obviously within your own companies, if you try to get involved in politics, you got to be careful because, companies generally should be agnostic about the political process, I believe. Individuals can have their own views. So when I was at Kirkland, I was her national finance chair when I was at Kirkland, and I was outspoken about her and the process. And there were times where other people at Kirkland did not like that. And so I had to hold back a little bit. Now having my own company.
Did you get a lot of, pushback at K&E?
I got a lot of support and a lot of pushback, just like
Half and half,
the real
right?
world. But as a partner at K&E, I had to look out for K&E as a whole. And because there were a lot of different opinions, I had to make sure that the press would never see K&E as leaning one way politically or another. With C Street, I can kind of do what I want. Now, my view is, without getting political or too political, I think this election is just so critically important that if I were at K&E and they said, if you keep speaking out, you'll get fired, I'd probably just let myself get fired because I think it's that important. But I do think that in a normal election, getting involved with people, you just got to make sure you're working with the company and they know what you're doing, and never go out to the press and talk to the press without the company knowing about it, because that happens a lot. And, but it's a really, really fulfilling process. And I know people get very, skeptical about the political process and candidates. My wife does that all the time. She says it a lot. But the truth is, so many of these leaders, they truly care about their constituents. They care about the country. They're trying to do their best. And having smart people from the private sector around them is important.
Great. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Well, I think you've left them speechless. Jon, give a hand for Jon Henes. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much. It's great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new from it. If you have any questions or comments for us or any of our guests, please feel free to leave them in the podcast platform of your choice, or send us an email at editor@maadvisor.com. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if you haven't done so already, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and subscribe to our M&A Alerts newsletter at the links in the description or on our website at www.maadvisor.com. This will help you stay updated on the latest M&A interviews and trends, and support our podcast to grow and reach more listeners like you. This is Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and founder of the M&A Advisor. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our M&A Advisor community. Until next time, stay safe and happy dealing.